I am Bablet Jonathan. You welcome to this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. In our top stories in this edition of the news, guns continue rocking Anglophone Cameroon. Yesterday or last night has been qualified as the night of guns in the northwest regional capital Bamenda. Several gunshots were heard in the town, and today was a near-death day because of the what happened last night in that part of the country. And the United States of America continues condemning the killing of civilians by government forces in the northwest and southwest regions of the country and separatist attacks in those parts of Cameroon. And the head of state, Paul Biya, will be speaking to the nation tonight ahead of National Unity Day celebration tomorrow. U.S. President Donald Trump continues threatening to pull the fundings of his country and the membership of the United States of America from the World Health Organization over COVID-19 management. Ahead of National Unity Day celebration tomorrow, the President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, will be speaking to the nation at 8 p.m. Today, he will be addressing the nation in a context different from previous years, and this year's celebration of the May 20 National Day will be taking place without public manifestations. The usual May 20 Day parade will be absent in this year's edition of the National Unity Day celebration, and the President of the Republic will be addressing the nation today, and expectations are high that the President of the Republic will be addressing some of the major issues affecting national life, notably the socio-political and security tensions in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, which have been threatening the unity of the country for close to 4 years today. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic and other issues of national interest are expected to emerge in President Paul Biya's address to the nation. Today we'll be bringing to you a live broadcast of the President of the Republic's address to the nation on Équinoxe Television, and after there's going to be a special program to analyze the head of state's speech to the nation. In the meantime, the United States of America condemns killings in Anglophone Cameroon. U.S. Undersecretary of State in charge of African Affairs, Thibault Nash, says in a tweet that the killing of civilians in the northwest and southwest regions by government forces is inexcusable. He calls for a follow-through on the Ngarbu massacre investigation and many other incidents of this nature. Thibault Nash also condemns separatist attacks on local officials, such as the murder of the mayor of Mamfe in the southwest region of the country. He calls for an end to violence and the beginning of talks between the government and those standing for cessation. And guns have continued talking in Anglophone Cameroon. Yesterday, several gunshots were heard in the northwest regional capital Bamenda, which sent shock waves down the spines of inhabitants who stayed in their homes today because of the fear of the unknown, because of the uncertainty looming over the town of Bamenda and the rest of Anglophone as a result of the Anglophone crisis that has been pulling on for close to 3 years today. And today was a near-death day in the town of Bamenda. We have details with Smanjik and Gabriel.
It was a dry day in Bamenda, Northwest Regional Capital, this Tuesday. Inhabitants of some neighborhoods decided to stay back at home after they heard gunshots in Bamenda for the second consecutive night. Even private or commercial cars alongside commercial motorcycles were off the road. Business persons at the food market were also indoors, so no business activity was operational. Only the security guards could be spotted in some of the stores. Ghost towns have always been observed in the northwest and southwest regions respectively on Mondays since the crisis began in the two English-speaking regions. Elsewhere, after staying away for several months from his ancestral stool, Senator Dr. Fondo Gayunga III is again sitting on his ancestral stool. Senator Dr. Fondo Gayunga's village has also been affected by the Anglophone crisis, with his palace involved. His return to Baliyunga was an opportunity for him to see the destruction that has been caused on his palace as a result of the ongoing crisis in the northwest and southwest regions.
Dr. Fondo Gayunga III back in his palace in the northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. In the meantime, the President of the National Assembly, Honorable Kavayeke Jibril, has convened an ordinary session for Parliament for the 10th of June 2020 at 11 a.m. This is contained in a release signed by House Speaker Kavayeke Jibril, and another session will be holding on June 12, 2020. The Congress will be meeting at the Yaoundé Conference Center for the oath-taking ceremony of Professor Joseph Ona, who is coming in as the 11th member of the Constitutional Council to replace Fuman Kam, who is off late. Now to Buda in the west region of the country, where insecurity is on the rise. People or inhabitants of the area are attacked by suspected bandits at very close intervals of time, day and night. Insecurity is a major problem in that part of the country, and within a space of less than 2 weeks, forces of law and order have arrested close to 10 suspected bandits who had been terrorizing inhabitants of that neighborhood or that part of the west region. Immaculate Fogwe.
Some parts of the west region of Cameroon have become hotbeds for violent crimes such as looting, kidnapping, human bone trafficking, and drug trafficking. One of those areas badly hit by the activities of the men of the world is Montio in Buda, headquarters of the Bambutus division. In the space of 2 weeks, 9 alleged bandits have been apprehended by the forces of law and order. A farmland which was transformed into a camp is now used as a training ground, a fun center, and a hideout for consumers of illicit drugs. At a time when the camp was raided by the security personnel, lunch was being prepared. The alleged bandits were forced to parade round the village with some of the items they had been using in the camp for training. The lone lady, who was part of the gang at the time when it was raided, denied being part of them. She says her role was to collect their daily savings for a microfinance institution. She further reveals that she supplies them with mangoes. But according to one of the bandits, she plays the role of a cook.
Je collecte aussi.
Quand ils viennent souvent fumer, ils sont
Quand je donne 500.
The raid is coming less than 2 weeks after some 4 men were apprehended by the Buda Gendarmerie Brigade. Their fate will be determined in the court of law.
And on COVID-19 news, the coronavirus figures are still rising in the Republic of Cameroon. The East region alone has recorded 149 confirmed cases of the coronavirus, 6 active cases and 4 deaths. In the meantime, a traditional ruler rejects the presidential COVID-19 aid. I'm talking about the traditional ruler of Minkan II in the south region of Cameroon, who rejected the COVID-19 materials sent by the president of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, and in front of the senior divisional officer of the Villa division, the traditional ruler said the presidential aid is insufficient and cannot be distributed to everybody in his area. Details for me, Armstrong Sander.
The office of the divisional officer for Ebolova 1 subdivision in the south region of Cameroon. Traditional rulers are lined up to receive COVID-19 preventive equipment sent by President Paul Biya. The custodians of the tradition of the people of the south region have come from different parts of the administrative unit, but their mindsets are not the same. Passing one after the other in front of the senior divisional officer for the villa, they are given 3 buckets, 17 face masks and a carton of savon each for their respective villages.
Et ne veut en perdre aucun. Porter ce message d'espoir qui voudrait qu'en respectant les mesures barrières,
while others receive without speaking their minds, the turn of the chief of Minka village burst the silence. The traditional ruler, after getting 3 buckets, 17 face masks and a carton of savon for his entire Minka village, openly told the senior divisional officer for the villa that the items were largely insufficient. I thank the head of state for this great work for all of us. I am at the interior of this country, at the border between Ebolova and Kribi. I am not interested in this. What I need is the senior divisional officer is provoked by his comment and in an angry tone threatens to dethrone him from position of traditional ruler.
Majesté, les actes du chef de l'État.
His Majesty, the acts of the head of state are not criticized. They are not commented negatively. Be disciplined. If not, I will remove you from your function.
Soyez un chef discipliné, sinon je vais vous les enlever.
The SDO for the Villa Division further insists that a gift from the president is never rejected, nor commented negatively. He thinks the traditional ruler who opted to speak the reality vis-a-vis the quantity of goods received and the number of people in his village is not a good example. Apart from the traditional ruler of Minka village in the south region, complaints on the quantity of the presidential items vis-a-vis the number of people to benefit have been recorded in many parts of Cameroon. Others, like the syndicates of the councils of Noon in the west region of Cameroon, in a letter to President Paul Biya, said the Cameroonian people at this stage of the COVID-19 pandemic needed more than face masks, savon and buckets. The COVID-19 preventive kits were also distributed to heads of some school establishments in Ebolova in order to enable them better prepare for the resumption of classes. The presidential COVID-19 preventive kit, worth 2 billion francs CFE, are being distributed in the 360 subdivisions across the Republic of Cameroon.
And the traditional rulers have been encouraging their respective subjects to help government in the fight against the COVID-19 by respecting the COVID-19 measures. The paramount ruler of Com in the Fundong subdivision, Boyo division, northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, has written a letter to all sons and daughters of COM, urging them to respect all the anti-COVID-19 measures of government and the sanitation rules of the World Health Organization. His Royal Highness Von Clement Z II says in the letter that he recognizes the challenges that they are facing with the COVID-19 pandemic and the Anglophone crisis, and urges them to respect all the rules in order to stop the spread of COVID-19 in his municipality and across the Republic of Cameroon. Now, in news out of the country, U.S. President Donald Trump threatens to pull the funding and membership of his country from the World Health Organization over COVID-19. President Trump said in a letter to the WHO, the World Health Organization, in which he outlines a 30-day deadline for the body to commit to substantive improvements or risks losing millions and U.S. membership altogether. Addressed to the World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the letter criticizes stages of the institution's response. Since December, the World Health Organization is accused of having allowed the pandemic to spin out of control at the cost of many lives. Yesterday, Trump called UN's health arm as a puppet of China, saying that it has failed to hold China responsible for the pandemic. And the United States Health Secretary Alex Azar accuses the World Health Organization of having an alarming lack of independence from China. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijiang said Trump was trying to mislead the public, smear China, and shift the blame for America's own incompetent response to the pandemic. And the U.S. has more than 1.5 million of the world's 4.8 million confirmed COVID-19 cases, with more than 90,000 deaths. Talking Point is up next. We started a discussion yesterday on African traditional medicine as a possible way out of the COVID-19, with our guest Professor Henry Famundam joining us from South Africa, and we're going to continue with that discussion today. Professor Henry Famundam, public health pharmaceutical care expert with several years of international experience. Thanks for joining us in this edition of Talking Point.
Thank you very much.
All right, before we continue with our discussion, yesterday the President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, is going to address the nation today at 8 p.m. ahead of National Unity Day celebration tomorrow. What are some of your expectations with regards to the speech of the President of the Republic tonight?
Well, Jonathan, thank you again for inviting me. To share some really important information about what is going on in the world, particularly with health. With regards to your question, my expectation is that, particularly talking about COVID-19, my expectation is that the president is going to, it's not only a health issue, it's an economic issue, that he's going to be able to calm the anxiety of the population. He's going to encourage the frontline staff, the health staff that are working in the clinics, in the hospital, but more important, encourage the population to be able to make sure that all the prevention efforts that the government has listed, that they're able to comply with it. And I think that's going to be very critical for going forward. I think we are a resilient people, and whenever people get together, they'll be able to do very well. And I think that's what the president would have to be encouraging and saying, what efforts has the government put, and that the government has to work in partnership with the population in order to succeed in eradicating or at least reducing a pandemic of this nature.
Professor Fomundam, you are a Cameroonian from the northwest region of the country, part of the Anglophone regions, one of the Anglophone regions hit by socio-political and security tensions, killings, destruction of properties going on for close to 4 years. Today, you are a citizen of a nation whose unity is seriously threatened, the unity that is expected to be celebrated tomorrow. What do you expect the head of state to see concerning these issues, concerning the state of the nation's unity, concerning the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon?
Well, I mean, the couple of things that I expect, this is a conflict that has been going on for about 4 years now. In my work throughout Africa, I've worked in Sudan, I've worked in Burundi, I've done work in Rwanda. So I do understand what conflicts like this do, and my expectation is that for what the government has been trying to do, it's a two-way street, and I'm expecting that the president yet again will be calling on the youths to be able to come out of the bushes, because I think it's more important to sit down and resolve some of the grievances which the government has acknowledged some, and I think it's very important that this message gets to people who are still carrying arms, because I've seen it in a lot of those countries that at the end of the day, when you carry arms, you have to sit down and discuss. And so it's very important, and I think that's what the head of state should be talking about, making sure that people drop their arms and have a genuine dialogue to make sure that this can be resolved, so that the country can once more carry forward the way we've always known it to be.
All right, let's talk about African traditional medicine. We began talking about this yesterday, and there is an ongoing debate on African traditional medicine as a possible way out of the COVID-19 pandemic, with Madagascar already using the COVID organics, and even Nigeria and other African countries, and Cameroon already using to an extent the herbal medicine of His Grace Samuel Kleda, who declares that his herbal medicine has treated over more than 100 COVID-19 patients. What's your take on this debate?
It's a very important debate for this continent, and traditional medicine, from the very definition of it, it's medicine that takes into consideration the culture of the people, it's indigenous to interventions that people do for health. However, what has not happened is that as things evolve, we need to be able to modernize our traditional medicines on the continent. Now, what you could see with some of the trials that are going on, there are about 180, almost 180 trials that are going on for COVID-19. And the people who are doing these trials have not come out to declare that these are the drugs that are going to be effective, because they're looking for evidence. Now, with traditional medicine, the challenge that we have is that we do not have solid evidence. There are lots of claims in South Africa, in Zambia, in Cameroon, with no evidence. Now, even given in Madagascar, what Madagascar has decided to do is that they've spoken to the South African government that you modernize this product by moving it through the clinical trial system. In clinical trials, it's where you determine that a drug is of good quality, it's efficacious, which means it's effective, and it's safe for the population. Now, currently, what we have with our traditional medicines, we don't know if it's effective because it's not gone through a formal process. We don't know if it's safe. So if somebody comes and tells you that I have treated 100 people and 500 people, there is no protocol in place. What kind of patients were enrolled? In COVID-19, about 80% of the patients are going to recover without any intervention. So how did he enroll his patients? And what kind of treatment is he giving? And do we know the quality of the product that he's using? What is the safety profile of the product that he's using? Now, that's what makes traditional medicine very challenging, in the sense that the West and the general media doesn't pick up on that because there is no evidence. The evidence is either very weak or there is no evidence.
But when we look at the case of Madagascar, for example, and the president, André Rajoelina, was speaking recently on France 24, and he says that there are all evidence that the COVID organics is treating people, is effective. And His Grace Samuel Kleda, Archbishop of the Douala Metropolitan Archdiocese of the Roman Catholic Church, he too has evidence. He has people that he can point and say, I treated this person, I administered the treatment on this person. But the World Health Organization is warning against the use of untested medicine. Is there a problem with African traditional medicine, or is a Western conspiracy denying the potentials of the African traditional medicine?
Okay. First off the back, because I've worked as a regulator, the conspiracy is probably blown out of proportion. It's overrated. There are individuals in the world that, of course, are not good people, just like business people are not good people, just like some of the pronouncements that we heard on French TV about testing medications in Africa. So yes, there are people who would not show a lot of interest in African medicine. But part of the problem, in fact, 80–90% of the problem, it's us in Africa and our scientists. What traditional doctors and traditional healers are able to do is identify a substance, identify a herb, and then our scientists in the country, which usually goes through the Ministry of Health. Now, the Ministry of Health in every country has the responsibility to make sure that every product that is used, number one, is of good quality, number two, that it's effective, or what they call efficacy, and number three, that it is safe. And there's a process to do that, which means our traditional healers should actually have a registry in the Ministry of Health where you can register your product and allow the Ministry of Health to be able to now link you up with the academic institutions or with the scientists so that you can put this through a process which we call the clinical trials. Now, that's what clinical trials are done. And you should really understand that if, with the number of people that are dying, everybody wants a treatment or cure for COVID-19. And so if it's going to come from Madagascar, it's going to come from Cameroon, everybody will be running to come to Cameroon or to Madagascar to take the treatment. The problem is we do not have evidence. We have not modernized how to show that the traditional medicine that we have, it has good evidence that it works, and it has a good safety record. Now, most of the medications that we've had in the world, they've come from herbs, so we know that. But they've gone through this process of what you call a clinical trial. In clinical trial, there's a procedure, and within the Ministry of Health in Cameroon, that is well known, what they should do. Now, if you come with a claim to say, I have treated 100 patients, I have treated 500 patients, there's a lot of questions I will ask. How did you do the diagnosis of the patients? How did you monitor them? And then, further to that, in my expertise, I'll probably be asking you that, what does the medicine do to somebody's liver? You probably don't know about it. What does it do to the kidney? You probably don't know about it. These are things that you would monitor when you conduct a clinical trial. And if they do this, the medication becomes available. You would have done a lot of good to humanity. You will get the notoriety, and you get perhaps millions or billions of dollars in profit because everybody will want the medication. So why should we have a medication like the one from the bishop or from Madagascar, and it's not put through this process so that the entire world can embrace it?
Professor, you're going to tell us a little more about that scientific process through which every medicine, every treatment should go through to be confirmed, to be certified. But first, I want you to react on this statement made by the president of Madagascar, André Rajoelina, who said on France 24 that if the treatment of COVID-19, the COVID-19 treatment, COVID organics, was discovered by a Western country, there will be no doubts, there will be no questions, there will be no hesitations on it. And he thinks that it's just a problem of Africa. It came from Africa. How can it come from an African country?
And I think that, with all due respect, he's the head of state. He's probably passionate about something that was discovered in his country, but that doesn't have a lot of the scientific knowledge that we know. It doesn't have to, because it's Africa. Now, what African countries have been doing and continue to do is that when you identify an entity like that, a chemical like that, that you think it has benefit to it. You partner with the Ministry of Health. Here we have a head of state that is talking. What he should have done, and what I think I've heard him say they're going to do now, is to come to a country like South Africa that has the clinical trials infrastructure and be able to say, this is the product that we have, and they will develop a protocol for it. That's how clinical trials are conducted. You develop a protocol, you look at the entity, you look at the chemical, and then you develop a criteria. What kind of patients do we want to target here? Do you want to target the patients that are asymptomatic? Do you want to target the patients that are in hospital, in the critical care? So all of this has to come into play. That's how it is done, so that when somebody picks up your protocol, they should say, I know about this, and the safety profile, we know about it, and then they'll be able to use it. But you can't just sit and make claims that your medicine works. And if we continue to do that, it will retard some of the good medicines that our traditional healers have on the continent. We must be able to modernize. Just like I said yesterday, that we have accepted that cell phones is the way to communicate. Chiefs and traditional healers all have cell phones because they've accepted that technology. 200 years ago, you use a gong to call people for a meeting. Now, even the chiefs and traditional healers, they use a cell phone. So we must be able to modernize our traditional medicines in order to be accepted globally.
All right.
So I do not agree with what the president's analysis.
All right, you already started answering this question, but tell us a little more about this scientific procedure, the different stages, the different steps that a treatment should go through to be accepted internationally, to be certified.
Good. So let me just give a background so that our televiewers will be able to understand how medicines come into the market. It takes an average of 10 years to bring a new medicine into the market. And for the cost of it, it costs about $800 million to bring a new medicine into the market. The first thing is that it is tested on animals. You want to understand how this medicine works in animals. It could be dogs, it could be guinea pigs. So you want to know, how does this medicine functions in animals? What kind of side effects does it have? When that process is completed, you write a report. Your regulatory authority reviews the report. The next thing is they will now give you permission to test it on humans. Just like the new vaccine that we see that they're talking about COVID. To test it on humans, it has 3 phases. The first phase of it is for you to test whether the medication, what does it do to your kidneys? What does it do to your liver? And if it's a tablet, how much of it do you swallow and it gets absorbed into your blood? So this is usually on healthy patients. So you select a good number of healthy patients just to see how the drug would work on the healthy patients. That's called phase 1. Phase 2 is when you begin to increase the number. Phase 1, just like we saw with the vaccine in the US, from Moderna, it's only 8 patients. Now, phase 2, they're going to go to about 600 patients. In phase 2, they give the drug longer, they increase the doses, they look at the safety, they write all the side effects, what that the drug has. And then phase 3 is where you open it up and you can try in about 3,000 patients. And this will be patients that have the disease, so that you actually see how the drug works for the disease, for how the drug works in the body, whether it has any safety side effects. And then when that is done, the next phase of it is now you have to produce the medication. When you produce the medication, we start looking at the quality of the medication. Just like what all of these traditional healers, you put your medication in a bottle. That's not good enough. How stable is it in a bottle? If you could put a liquid in a bottle, how long should the patient leave the liquid standing? For 2 months, for 3 months? Does it have any effect? Does sunlight have any effect on the medication? We don't know about that. So that's the problem that we have with African traditional medicine, that none of these things, we don't know about it. I don't know the safety profile about it. I don't know how effective it is, and I don't know the quality of it. You've put some concoction in a bottle. How long am I supposed to use this bottle? How long does the medicine interact with the bottle itself? Because that's what we test. But in real, so that is the scientific process that we do in order to know that the medication works.
Professor, somebody listening to you now will ask the question. Several persons, hundreds, have been treated already of COVID-19 with African traditional medicine declared as untested by the World Health Organization. If the traditional medicine in Madagascar, in Cameroon, were to go through the 10-year process, requesting the huge amount of money that you're asking for, before it gets to the market, all the people who have been treated would have died. Many more people would have died. And if the pandemic is growing at the same speed as it is growing now in Cameroon, the whole Cameroon will be dead by that time, Professor.
All right. So what the 10-year description that I gave, it's when you come up with a new entity that nobody knows, you test it on animals first. The reason why we may even get a vaccine by December is because we're using molecules and chemicals that are already known. Some of them have already been tested. We're repurposing drugs, just like you hear about hydroxychloroquine being tested. By the way, it is not fully approved, and I know a lot of African countries have it on their protocol. It is not fully approved because it's still going through the trials. Now, it's not all the drugs. What I described to you for 10 years and that amount was an average. And so if for African traditional medicine, you can come and say, well, I had been producing this medicine. I have a couple of people in the village that have been taking it. That tells us that there's some reasonable safety profile. If you register with the Ministry of Health, they should have a desk, and I'm hoping that they have, because most African countries have, that deal with traditional medicine, will be able to link you up with an academic institution. And it shouldn't take long, especially in an emergency situation like this. It shouldn't take long if the safety is already certified. And so the safety will be known because it's probably been given to a number of patients. So we don't have to go through animal testing and then phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Besides, there's also something called fast track. So because this is a pandemic, or we always see with cancer drugs, because cancer has no cure, we put them through a fast track. So we don't waste a lot of time going from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And so it's very intensive.
Professor, when we look at the anti-COVID-19 or the COVID-19 response of the different countries affected of the World Health Organization, there is a question that comes up. Where is African traditional medicine? Where is traditional medicine in general, not only Africa? Nobody is talking about traditional medicine.
Okay. So African traditional medicine is very much recognized. The World Health Organization, since 2001, has actually put a compendia together on how we need to integrate African traditional medicine into the healthcare system. Because many years ago, we said health for all in 2000, that never worked. And so the strategy that they're trying to use now is to make sure that because we have people in the villages who depend on their traditional healers, we have to look for ways to integrate them. But for us to do that is what I'm talking about now. We must be able to modernize that process. You cannot have a situation where a traditional healer sits in some village and say, I have the medication for this, but we have to put it through some kind of evidence. That's what people are looking for. And so the Ministry of Health is supposed to create an enabling environment. If somebody in Kambe or in Kuseri say, I have a treatment for a particular disease, you should be able to talk to maybe from your local SDO who talks to the Ministry of Health, so that the product is actually registered to the Ministry of Health that says, we're going to now connect you to the University of Yaoundé or University of Bamenda so that they can begin to analyze the product. If we don't do that, the product that we call traditional medicine is going to continue to remain with us, and it will just die. Because it's not, people don't know, there's no evidence, we don't know whether it works, we don't know whether it is safe, there's no documentation of anything. And just to hear by word of mouth to say, we have treated X number of patients who had COVID, that's not acceptable. Because like I said, 80% of COVID patients will recover on their own, whether you give them, if you don't give them anything, they'll recover on their own. So we need to ensure that what we're doing is that we put it through a proper protocol.
All right. So the World Health Organization from what you're saying, and the ministries of public health in the different African countries and even other Asian countries and so on should give proper consideration to traditional medicine and not mount international pressure on countries like Madagascar, where the president has come out openly to say that we have COVID organics that is treating COVID-19. Now, in the United States of America, Moderna coronavirus vaccine trial is showing some promising early results. What do you think about this?
So, this is what they did with the product from Moderna. It's an mRNA vaccine. They've done only phase 1 because the chemical entity is known. In phase 1, they only gave it to 8 patients, and they've seen that the patients produced antibodies that are equivalent to somebody that has been infected and recovered. And these are neutralizing antibodies. Neutralizing antibodies, for lay purposes of explaining, is that these are antibodies that would actually grab the virus and not allow it to infect any of the cells. Now, neutralizing antibodies are the best because very few times do we actually have a lot of mutation that compared to the non-neutralizing antibodies. So they have not come out to already declare that we have the treatment. They've already announced that it looks promising, and the next phase is going to be phase 2, and they're going to do in about 600 patients, and the next phase, which starts in July, is going to be phase 3. Until they get that evidence and until they get the safety profile, they cannot confidently say this is the solution. And that's what is lacking with the traditional medicines. We don't have that. We don't have any evidence. We don't have a safety profile. And so it becomes difficult. And being an African, I'm very concerned because there's a lot of African traditional medicine that probably has a lot of good, but we don't know about it. And so we need to modernize. And I understand that some of the traditional healers are concerned that their product will be stolen, and that's where your government comes into play. And we have intellectual property issues, and there are lots of organizations in Africa now that would register your product to make sure that you have a patent for it so that it cannot be stolen. So this is something to inform our traditional healers to say they need to open up, so that imagine that somebody in Bamenda comes up with medication for COVID. Do you know what that's going to do? I mean, the profitability that is there and the work that you would have done to humanity in the whole world. I mean, so these are things that we need to be able to modernize it. And I think the onus is on our Ministry of Health to make sure that they bring all the traditional healers together and look for ways to be able to encourage them how to register their product.
What are some of the ways that through which government can encourage the traditional medical practitioners to do better, to modernize their practice and their products?
Well, there are a couple of ways that they have to do. In South Africa here, they have in the Ministry of Health, they have a big office which is catering for traditional healers. And I'm not sure, I can't speak for it. They may have one in Cameroon, but that's the beginning, to make sure that traditional healers are represented in the National Ministry of Health. They feel like they are an integral part of the national health in the country. And so they are represented, and so they can easily call somebody who would understand them to say, I have a product that I think it can treat COVID, it can treat gout, it can treat hypertension. And then the person who represents you in the Ministry of Health is able to say, can you come so that we can sit down, register, and then you go through the channels and be able to they would now identify a university in South Africa to say, can you work with this group? And then you can then confidently work with them, knowing that the product is yours and the patent would have been discovered and registered so that nobody steals your product, which is what the traditional healers are always concerned. We need to ensure and tell them that this is something that they should be confident that whatever information they're giving you, it's not going to be stolen, and which is part of their concern.
Professor Henry Famundem, public health and pharmaceutical care expert with several years of international experience. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your televiewers.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today. Do stay tuned to programs on Équinoxe Television, the live broadcasts of the President of the Republic of Cameroon's address to the nation ahead of National Unity Day celebration. Tomorrow will be coming up on Équinoxe Television at exactly 8 p.m. Stay with us.